economists, another quick video. This one is about the news story of solar batteries and subsidies. As we know, solar batteries would create positive externalities. They're very good for the environment. Subsidy is the government response, and we'll briefly look at intended and unintended outcomes. Okay, so another externalities video, because this is what's happening this week in the news. So just a reminder, some of the key terminology, you've got your IB concepts there, sustainability, interdependence, intervention, and you've got some key definitions around externalities, you know, the impacts, positive or negative, on those outside of the transaction. In this case today, we're looking at a positive production externality. Positive means we want more, production means it's supply, externality, well, we know what that is, and the welfare loss which arises due to these market failures of externalities. Okay, so why are we interested in solar batteries and subsidies today? Right now in August 2025? Well, this has literally just happened. The government has introduced this scheme called the Cheaper Home Batteries Program, and what we've seen is a massive uptake of batteries. Now, a lot of that is from people that had already brought in their solar panels but couldn't afford a solar battery, but now a lot more people can because of the subsidy. So they're really everyone's really surprised at the massive surge in demand for solar batteries this month. Okay, so if we present the problem is one of positive production externalities. Before, if we were just operating at the market curve, the quantity in the market, we had a welfare loss because we weren't allocating enough to solar batteries. Because if we consider the positive externalities, so producers who produce solar batteries create positive externalities because it's clean energy. It helps the environment. It removes, as this quote says, it removes the carbon emissions. It's saving us from emitting 21 million tonnes of carbon dioxide. So very, very good for the environment if we produce more solar power and we store it in solar batteries. Okay, so that's the problem diagram. We have a positive production externality and an underproduction by the market of solar batteries. Okay, and then we have a solution. So the government has just introduced this 30% subsidy for solar batteries, which we know have positive externalities, and it's introduced a 30% subsidy. So as I've included another quote, you know, householders have leapt at the opportunity to use more of the power that they generate themselves and to sell it for higher prices at the peak hour. So really good financially for a lot of people. The market, I'll leave you to decide whether you think we've hit the sweet spot with the government subsidy. Has the government subsidy, which we know shifts the supply curve to the right, just one of the government intervention through subsidies, shifts the supply curve to the right. You know that from early economics studies. But whether we are operating at this optimum, have we shifted to the optimum quantity of production? Critically analyse whether you think we've achieved that or whether we've just shifted the supply curve, say somewhere in the middle. Critically analyse, are we operating at the optimum now because of the government intervention through the subsidy? Now, a couple of other things to note, because we have been talking about a surge in demand. So I haven't actually drawn a change in the demand curve here because we have had a demand increase, a shift. In some ways, you could just say it's a shift along the curve caused by the change in price, the price reducing due to 30% subsidy. If we had a shift in the supply curve to the right, we would expect an increase in price. But prices have not increased at this point, not so far. Because there's healthy competition in the sector. So solar batteries are actually relatively easy to produce. So we've just seen more production, more competition, more healthy competition amongst the battery suppliers and a focus on decreasing upfront costs. We've also seen another shifter of the supply curve, which is an increase in the number of suppliers. So the subsidy plus an increase in the number of suppliers, which also shifts the supply curve to the right, is perhaps what is keeping prices down. And the other thing we've seen, that which we also know is a shifter of the supply curve, is an improvement in technology. So all of these things, the subsidy, the increase in the number of suppliers, the improvement in technology, they're all actually working towards shifting our supply curve to the right, which is partly what is keeping the prices down. So we're not seeing that surge in demand, which is causing an increase in price. Okay, so the whole idea of the subsidy is to gradually decrease the costs of batteries to make them more affordable for everyone over the longer term. So just to briefly recap on some intended and unintended consequences, because we always look for those as economists. So obviously we have the intended consequence. We have seen a huge uptake of clean energy. That's great. An unintended consequence is the emergence of scammers. So do be careful. I've only included one unintended consequence there, but do be careful of scammers, because whenever there's subsidy, you might get scammers trying to scam you. Okay, so be careful of that. Now, just to finish off with some example exam questions, these are IB exam questions. So you can see this one is quite relevant. Explain how the provision of subsidies can help correct positive production externalities, that's a different scenario, and evaluate alternative government responses to the problem of positive production externalities. And then I put in a couple of other questions for you as well, just for you to get used to the language of the IB questions. Okay, see you next time.